Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Africam show, proudly brought to you by explore.org. I hope you're all having a wonderful afternoon, morning, or whatever time of the day it might be where you are. My name is Taylor McCurdy, and I'll be your host for the next little while as we talk about and watch all the most amazing wildlife. And this is a live and interactive show if you are just joining us for the first time, which means that you get to chat to us, which is, well, us, me and all my personalities, which is going to be quite exciting, I suspect. And we're starting it off with a fair amount of action. We're at HESC at the moment, the Hoedspruit Endangered Species Center, and we're looking at a cheetah by the name of Tammy. Now, Tammy is heavily pregnant. But before I get into that, I'd just like to hear from you. Say hello, what you're drinking. Maybe you're having a snack and where you're from. But I see that there are a couple people who have already joined. We've got Bridget McKinney. Hello, hello. We've got Hubert Hans. Great to hear from you. You're from Kentucky, which is great. And we've got Jean Gale. You've said good morning. You're settling in with your coffee. And your husband is also making blueberry pancakes. Do you have the space for one more? I haven't had pancakes in a very long time, and I love blueberries. And then, dear NC, great to hear from you again. Yes, the internet is actually working because I'm not home. I'm at my folks' place at the moment. I live a little bit outside of town, and it's a bit of a disaster with internet as we don't have fiber lines and we rely on the satellite internet, which is a hit or miss, mainly a miss though. Then we've got Jack de Boer. Hello, hello. Great to hear from you again. And Zygote, namaste to you too. I've just returned from India and I absolutely loved it. And then we've got Casper's Third Ghost. Again, nice to see so many familiar names. We've got hot coffee ready today. Mr. HUAE 87, you've got coffee and cake, but you've got to tell us what kind of cake you're having. And then Tammy the cheetah can talk. No, I'm just joking. Tammy's also watching today. Amber Co, it's also great to have you. You've got a slice of lemon cake and coffee. Why are you all eating cake so early? I only say this because I'm incredibly envious. It is 4 p.m. in the afternoon in South Africa, and I still haven't eaten anything, but my family is here, so we can have a nice big braai. And then lastly, we've got Jan Powers. But if you are just hopping on a little bit late, no worries at all. Please still pop in and say hello. But we're not going to stay here for too long, but this could be quite exciting. Now, for those of you that don't know what Hoedspruit Endangered Species Center is, it's essentially a rehabilitation center to a degree. If animals have come in from poaching incidents, just as an example, they could rehabilitate them in the wildland, but they do have an enormous cheetah project. Now, for those of you that are not familiar with cheetahs and how endangered they actually are, many years ago, I think it was in the 70s actually, the cheetah populations, or the 60s and 70s, diminished to 60 individuals, which is crazy. So it's been hard work by conservationists all over Africa to try and help breed cheetah and then return them to the wild. But there is a lot of basically playing the creator involved here because they're trying to keep the genetics as diverse as possible. Now, Tammy, like I said, is heavily pregnant. She's pacing up and down. She did not eat this morning. And she's sort of looking a little bit more lethargic than, her typical sprightly self. So they are suspecting that she might give birth today. Isn't that exciting? Now, it might not be right now, although fingers and toes crossed, because to see a live cheetah birth would be absolutely spectacular. But you can, of course, watch this camera a little bit later. She has got a little place where she can den. And the great thing is that there's a camera that's already set up inside, because it's highly unlikely that she's going to give birth out into the open. Even when cats or the cheetahs are out in the wild, they will find it could be a cavity between rocks. It could be a termite mound. It could be in a densely vegetated shrub. So she'll go in there. So fingers crossed. She looks quite round. It's a bit difficult to tell from here, of course, exactly what's going on. We can't really see her mammary glands, how swollen they are. Have they darkened? Can we see a waxy secretion? All these types of things. But this other behavior of not eating, constantly pacing, just sort of the general look of discomfort is present. So keep an eye on that. But during the show, if something does happen, you can bet that we'll come straight back to this camera. But in the meantime, we're going to head to Kenya and check out one of my favorite cameras in the whole wide world. And of course, all of the animals. Isn't that great? We've got impala and we've got helmeted guinea fowl. There are hundreds of them, not quite hundreds, but quite a few indeed. So this is an area called Oldonyo, and it is beautiful. You can see the lovely mountains in the background, and it's nice to see how lovely and lush it is. At this time of the year in Kenya, they're experiencing the long rains, and they extend until about the end of May. Sometimes they end a little bit earlier, sometimes they go on a little bit longer. So that's why you're seeing it so lush at the moment before it tends to dry out. And there's always rains in East Africa. It's just, really interesting, but not normally enough to promote a lot of growth. So we're going to start to see the vegetation turning back to the drabs, colors of browns and mustards. That, of course, is great for us around this particular area with this camera and its positioning, because it's going to draw lots of wildlife in. Hubert Hant, you said that you're so glad that you found this site to help you pass the time while you do 6 hours of chemo. Oh, goodness. I'm so sorry, Hubert. I'm wishing you a speedy recovery. And yes, this is a safe place. This is a fun place. So ask as many questions as you like, and you'll see the community is really supportive too. And who knows, you might make some lifelong friends here. April Owl, you've just jumped on board. You said good morning. It's nice and sunny in Connecticut, which is great. And you've, of course, got your usual cherry iced tea, and you're ready to go. And then MG Leopard Spots, hello from California. You've got iced water currently. I was also drinking some iced lemon water, but I've misplaced it. I actually don't know where it is. Now I'll just have to dehydrate, unfortunately. But like I said, this is just such an amazing place. If I could spend all day in one part, just because of what I've seen from a camera, it has to be here at Old Donyo. I mean, I know it's just impala and just guinea fowl, but wait till you see what else arrives. The grass in the background is so tall. I bet the animals are loving it, especially the elephants, able to come through, use their long trunks, pull up nice, delicious, tasty bits of grass. But again, this is one of my favorite things to see every single year when the rain pours and all the vegetation starts to grow. And you start to look around the edge of the waterholes, and you can just see how much traffic is consistently coming through, how popular this waterhole is. There's virtually no grass for a couple of meters from where the little waterhole starts. You can see that sort of brown edging here. That's just animal. Oh. What happened? Something got a fright. It's quite amazing to see them all fly across the screen like that. Okay, well, the impala is still staying put, and the second individual has come back. He just got a fright from the other guinea fowl. I don't think it's necessarily too serious. Otherwise, the impala would have been announcing that there's a predator nearby by snorting and grunting. Guinea fowls, however, have a lot more predators, but I'll tell you about them now. Let's listen to these two males as they sort of clash their horns together. Doesn't that sound amazing? So in most parts of Africa, it's rutting season, or coming to the end of rutting season for impala rans, where they start to defend territories and spend a lot of time with females and try to keep as many females as possible within their territories so they can mate with them. But in Kenya, I found it to be quite interesting. Now, in certain parts where there is food almost available year-round, for example, like the Masai Mara, or if you go down into the Serengeti, they don't seem to have a strict rutting season, because I've seen lambs at different times of the year. But in an area like where Old Donyo is, for example, It's a lot drier, it's a lot more arid, very similar to what we're experiencing up in the low-file parts of South Africa. So the northeastern areas, think of the Greater Kruger National Park, the Sabi Sand Game Reserve, the Timbavati, which we typically have ratting season now. So this is going to sort of dampen down. And the reason why I'm quite confident in saying that is look how relaxed everyone is. If this was a serious fight and these males are really keen on holding onto this spot, which is great. There's food, there's a permanent water source, there's lovely trees and shade just behind them. There would be no sparring, no playing around, no what looks like almost practicing. They mean business. And when those horns meet, my goodness, it's like it sounds like, gosh, two pans being banged together. But they're just sort of just playing around a little bit now. And you can see there's a young male just on the left. He's just popping in. And then now normally an individual of this size would have typically start to get kicked out of the herds. But when the rutting season is coming to an end, you start to see mixed individuals. You see males, females, young males, older males. They don't really mind too much at all. It's a beautiful scene. And then, of course, we've got the giraffe. So I just want to quickly touch back onto the guinea fowl. Like I said, they've got a lot more predators than something like an impala has or a giraffe. So they tend to react, I suppose, more frantically than, say, an impala. Now, that could have been a bird of prey that was flying over, and that's why they panicked like that. Also, could just be one was a bit more and a bit more like a nervous Nelly, if you will, and panicked. And then, just like sheep, they all tend to follow one another instead of sticking around and being the one being the meal. Did you see that? Those birds were, sort of made a noise, and look how the impala are now looking around. Just making sure. I just find it so fascinating how animals communicate with one another on a level that we have yet to even understand. Oh, okay. Let's go do something a little bit different. We're going to head back to South Africa now, not too far away from where I am sitting. And we're going to head to Timbavati Waterside in Kaseri. Isn't this beautiful? Now, this is the weather that I'm experiencing right now. We can't figure out, is it going to rain or is it not? I thought I heard some thunder rumbling. You can see the wind has picked up a little bit. The branches blustering from one side to the other, and the clouds are gray and they're dropping ever so slightly. That's not stopping this beautiful herd of elephants, though, coming down for a drink. It's been rather hot, especially during the middle of the day. The clouds pretty much burnt away or blew away. And I was playing paddle, which is a sport, and it got very hot on the paddle courts at one point. So when I finished, I thought I was going to have to be like an elephant and get in the old swimming pool. But like I said, now it's cooled down again and rain is on the way. We will be very happy. And I say we, I speak on behalf of all the animals, the plants, you name it. So there we go, all the flora and fauna in these parts of South Africa. We desperately need it. The bush is looking quite dry already. I'm rather surprised by that. Even though we did have a fair amount of rain, it was just sort of spread out quite a bit. We had quite a big downpour earlier on this year, and then we haven't really had anything consistent in this area. So, yes, if we could get like another 20 or even better, if we get 40 mils of rain, my goodness, that'll be enough to top the water holes up even more and just to bring about a last bit of green growth to tie the animals over to the next sunny season. It sounded like there were some spur fowls just calling in the distance, that very raspy sort of sound. And because it's super cloudy, we're going to lose light a lot quicker, although I cannot believe every year I say the same thing. How is it getting dark so quickly? Because just a few months ago, we were sitting until 7 p.m. before it was starting to get dark. And now by 5:30, it's almost pitch black outside. So the birds are going to start chatting earlier and settle down for the evening a lot sooner, especially if there's rain threatening. There we go. You can see one rather large elephant has had enough to drink and is moving out of the water. Let's see if they're going to follow suit. If they're going to stick around and just carry on drinking. The individuals on the right look like they may be thinking about it. So it's interesting with elephants, they're so closely bonded with one another. Those connections are almost inseparable. So if one elephant, especially if it's, say, the matriarch, which is sometimes difficult to tell, especially if you're just watching this herd for the first time, sort of makes a move, they don't just charge off in the opposite direction. There's been so many discussions that have been had that we, of course, cannot understand. So it's very much like a voting system within elephants. Everybody has a say, everybody has a vote, but with the older, more experienced elephants, they, of course, are going to be the ones that are heard, if you excuse the pun, the most, because they have a better understanding. But sometimes it does happen where they might disagree with an individual that's wanting to make the decision, and then they go and do something else instead. And this is what I love. I'm so excited. I cannot wait until we develop equipment where we're able to actually understand what animals are saying. We're getting to the points now where I know a lot of you have heard this before, but Hubert, I'm not sure how long you've been watching, but there's been a really interesting discovery over probably the last year or so, where they've just worked out that elephants, of course, they communicate with one another, but they actually use names to address one another, which is crazy to think because, why would animals have names to refer to one another as? And this, of course, is just typical humans, just again, we just think that we're the most intelligent life force out here. But when in fact, these animals have been on this planet for a lot longer and have definitely adapted ways that we just can't comprehend. So with the AI technology that's coming out, they're using algorithm learning machines and, researchers that have been studying same groups of elephants for years and years, specifically Dr. Joyce Poole is who I'm talking about here. She just isolated sounds that were being repeated regularly and played them back, and certain with individuals within the herd would respond, and then they worked out, my goodness, they have names. What they call each other, we'll never know, but I would be very excited if we could have an insight. And it will be great for the preservation of wildlife, because if we could understand what these animals are saying, right, that makes them an entity. They need laws to protect them. And I know there's a very interesting study that's going on now with law and animals communicating, showing how intelligent they are and how they're going to try and figure out if they'd be able to represent and write rules for these animals, which maybe in the future would protect them even further than what conservationists are able to do right now. So again, very news. I listened to a podcast about it. I think it was actually National Geographic that released this, but it was fascinating to read. So still in its infancy, but when it does all come about, it's going to be great. Also, just so nice to hear elephants drinking. I feel like it's been years since I watched elephants. But then I say this, and I've just, like I said, I was just in India, and it was just amazing to see Asian elephants. Now, I've seen elephants in Sri Lanka, and then, of course, I finally got to see elephants in India, and they're rather different. Not as small as I think what your brain would comprehend. I've spoken about this before with Sri Lankan elephants. I always thought, because everyone says the Asian elephants are much smaller than African elephants. So yeah, in my mind, I think I was expecting pygmy elephants. But that's obviously not the case at all. They're amazing. They just look so different. And it always takes me a day or two, like, of watching them to really kind of get into it, because I just love African elephants so much, and I don't get to spend lots of time. And I love the way that they're put together. When you look at these Asian elephants, it's like they're so vastly different. A big hump in the middle of their head, so they almost like their crown is more pronounced. A lot of pigmentation. Seeing Indian elephants was crazy because they've got huge tusks. The males get enormous tusks, where in Sri Lanka, only 3% of male elephants get tusks. And in fact, what they do have that's present, you can sometimes see on females too, is these tiny little tushes. So to see an elephant with big tusks, even in Africa, is really special and not always a very common sight. But it was great to see so many big individuals in Kaziranga National Park, specifically in Assam in India. Great place. And then we've got Leela May 6. You said, good morning for the love of elephants. I could sit and watch this all day. You can even see how some of the individuals here, you can see they're not even drinking anymore. They're just taking in the moment, relaxing. You see how this cow that's got her body sideways to us, her trunk is twisting. She's sort of smelling what's going on, but she is completely relaxed right now, if not having a quick siesta. So some of the herd have moved off, but it looks like they're, just moving to the green grass where they're continuing munching away. Oh, this is beautiful. Thank you, elephants. But I think we're going to do a quick change of scenery and see how many animals we can pop up today. We're going to head all the way to the Sabi Sand Game Reserve to Nkoro and check out a rather tall animal. There we go, giraffe. This is also such a great pan. I love this open area in front of Nkoro. It's really beautiful. You don't realize how big the open area is until you're standing on the decks of the at the lodge. And there are a couple of giraffes. I don't know why. It almost looks like this little pan has been dug out quite a bit. But to be fair, I also haven't spent a lot of time in and around Nkoro for months. So I'm not familiar with all the changes, and sadly, I don't get to watch the camera as often as I would. But it might just be the angle. But there come the other two giraffe at the back. Yes, come on through, have a drink. And hear all the oxpeckers, that high-pitched chirp. There were, looks like some Birchall starlings that flew across your screen a moment ago. Blacksmith lapwings, as usual. Everyone is here. You can see it looks like whatever we're experiencing right now in terms of the weather has actually already passed in Coral. You can see the clouds, how they're opening up quite a bit. And if I had my phone on me, I'd probably check to see what's going on in Mozambique and if they're having any big storms. Because at this time of the year, this is typically where we get a lot of our weather coming from. I wonder what the giraffe are looking at now. This rather large individual, which looks like it could be a male. Definitely. Maybe you're not staring at anything. Perhaps you're just concentrating. Oh, and then Kirst just said that she thinks it's just the water level that's dropped, which is quite possible because I haven't actually seen this camera in ages. And like I said, we've hardly had any rain. But even though, there's some greenery to it, I do worry that some of the water holes might not last till the end of the year. But it's also not uncommon these days to have rainfall in winter in the Lowveld. It's been like that for the past couple of years. And this young giraffe now taking its time to go and have a drink. Come on. Always cautious at the water's edge. Also doesn't look as windy here. I see the trees are moving, but I think it's past. She looks like it's going to be lovely, gorgeous golden light soon. All we need now is a clan of hyenas, a pride of lions, or perhaps a leopard. Wouldn't that be nice if while these giraffe are drinking, a leopard just sort of popped up on the termite mound? That's the kind of action I've been missing. very quiet out there. Just a few birds that you can hear chirping. In fact, mainly just the oxpeckers. There's a great reflection. Watch that oxpecker. Oh, you're going to take advantage and go in the ear. That's very clever. Do that while I'm busy drinking. And then you can't shake your head as quickly, otherwise you're going to lose out on a sip. Jack de Boer, you've asked if these are Maasai giraffe. No, these are actually southern giraffes. So this is the species that you see around South Africa, Botswana, Zimbabwe, Zambia. Except if you're in South Luangwa National Park, then you might be lucky enough to see the thorny-crowned giraffe. Again, it's just the subspecies of the southern giraffe. So with the Maasai giraffe, you've got to go much further north into Africa, and then of course around Kenya and Tanzania, you see them quite nicely, and they're tall, they're huge. Not that you could tell the difference between height, even looking at them in a vehicle. You put them on either side of one another, definitely. And then, Kauru, you said, what was it? That bird screech calling. That I'm assuming that it might have. If there's a oh my gosh, what's wrong with crested barbet? Sorry, my brain glitched. I was trying to get the words out, and it just wouldn't. So that's the crested barbet. Let me know if that's the one that you're thinking about. Otherwise, the sound is the oxpecker. That sort of hammering metallic sound, that's the blacksmith lapwing. I think it's probably the crested barbet. It's a beautiful bird. I sat and watched one yesterday for the first time in a very long time. Now you can see that nice golden light that I was telling you about. Also, looks like it's... Are you lifting your tail for the oxpecker, or are you also about to deaf? But sometimes they'll do that. They'll be accommodating to the birds because they do have an understanding that they help. If you've ever had to pull a tick off of yourself or off one of your pets, you'll know that they don't really enjoy it either. So it's not, I don't think it's a pleasant experience, but to get to those hard to reach places, it does require some help from the giraffe. So that's maybe why it lifted its tail away from its backside, just to allow the oxpecker to get underneath the tail where there will be plenty of ticks building up. I really cannot imagine, like, I sit and I've thought about it quite often, going, imagine not being able to pull the ticks off yourself and how itchy it must be. Like, I totally understand why all animals, and it's always more entertaining when giraffe do it, where they step over a tree and try and get as many branches into the crevices as they can just to provide a little bit of relief. That's a starling. I think it's a Birchall starling that's chatting away now. That also, please rate my bird calls. Really terrible. There we go. Zygo, do you also agree with me, saying that it was the crested barbet, the oxpecker, and the lapwing? Oh, and the Power said that it was well before those. I'm so sorry. I didn't. You have to just tell me to stop talking, because when I talk and then I don't listen properly. If it's the screeching now, maybe, then it's the virtual starling. Try to see what the giraffe is feeding on. If it's feeding on a bushveld gardenia, looking at the very white stems, and it's quite a scrappy tree when it grows for the most part, especially if in an area where it's not been fenced off and manicured nicely. You can see the trees fight for their lives here. So I don't know if you've ever thought about it like that. Think about how a tree might grow in a beautiful garden where there's very little that can get to it and feed on it. Right, go straight, doesn't have to scramble for light. And then when they get browsed on like this, the trees become kind of erratic and the branches go everywhere. Oh, sorry, Cara. I apologize again that I missed it. But if you do hear it, flag it immediately, and then I will listen properly. Well, I'll try to. But right now, it's pretty much the same birds that we've been chatting about that have just been repeating themselves. There's that bird that you can hear now is a brown-headed parrot. You hear them. Very typical parrot or parakeet sound that you would hear. That was so amazing while I was in Sri Lanka, is all the birds. I almost died. Now, I'm not the biggest birder in the world, but I like birding. I enjoy it, but I don't like sometimes how obsessed people get with it. And I say this, but I do the same thing with insects, and that probably drives people mental. So basically, you're driving and there's this tiniest little brown thing that flies into the bush, and then you obsess over it for 20 minutes, figuring out what it is. That's not me. But birding in Sri Lanka and India is just on a completely another level. I can only talk about those two areas because I'm sure going to Costa Rica or South America somewhere would be also phenomenal. But if you enjoy birds and enjoy photographing them, India and Sri Lanka are great places. They sit still, which is madness, right? I can't get them to sit still here at all. Oh, and then Cara, you said it was the virtual starling. Woohoo! Okay, amazing. I'm glad we've solved that mystery. And it's also so great to see uh, a few of you who have you know, taken to birding and are starting to familiarize yourself with so many different calls. So that's always nice. Nice to see. Zygote, I know you're quite fond and you're pretty good with the bird calls. I know you've helped me out quite a few times, especially when we've headed up to Kenya. And that's where it becomes quite tricky. It's just remembering all the different bird calls from all the different countries. It's one thing remembering the names, but then wrapping your mind around the bird calls is a whole different kettle of fish. Just having a quick listen. There's nothing really else calling in the background. And of course, giraffe don't make very much noise either, so we won't be hearing anything from them. And this is a female giraffe that we're looking at right now. You see her tummy is quite round. It looks like a beach ball. I wonder if there's a young giraffe brewing in there. When was the last time, for those of you that have been watching the Encore camera, that you saw a big herd of buffalo come by? It's something that I've noticed over the last year and a half, maybe even a bit longer. I haven't seen as many big herds of buffalo in the northern Southern. I'm trying to think. I mean, I've seen a couple, but I just remember obviously during the droughts from the end of 2014 to about 2018, you see so many big herds coming through. I suppose we've had substantial rain and water holes and well, just the general water table within areas or dry riverbeds has been topped up, so animals can stay away for a little bit longer. There's some people that are saying it's going to be a relatively dry and cold winter, which we haven't had for that long. I didn't think last year was particularly cold, to be quite honest. Um, and I was all the way in the Waterberg. That was a bit chilly, but again, not as cold as I've been before. I also was in Zambia and I was quite surprised by the temperatures. But this year, we're starting to feel a dip in the temperatures quite soon. This yesterday, I went on a walk around the Blyde, the Northern Drakensberg Mountains and the Blyde Canyon, and I was freezing. I couldn't believe how cold I was. I just wore like a little puffer half sleeve jacket, and that was a big mistake. Okay, I think we're gonna head off from these giraffe, but we'll keep an eye on them, see if anything else develops. But let's go back to Old Donyo and see what the guinea fowl and impala are up to. Yep, this is my favorite time of the day is watching guinea fowl. Look at them. I don't know what it is. When they come to a waterhole, they completely lose their marbles and they kiss one another and they are very chatty. And it's, I mean, there's obviously a stranger around the waterhole and the animals are always competing for water, but it's not like there's a shortage here. I also think lots of different personalities, right, come through. Some more boisterous and bossy than the others, or dominating would probably be a better word that I could use to describe that. But it's my favorite. Like if I could sit at a waterhole at sunset and watch them, they chase each other, and when it is nice and dry, and you can imagine all the dust that comes with it, it's quite a spectacular sight. Now, Bridget McKinney, you said that you so wish you could have heard those giraffe humming. Now, there were some giraffe hanging around here at El Doño in Kenya. Maybe we'll see one. But I'll quickly just go into the communication of giraffes. Now, when I started guiding, which was, I'm so glad I can say it was quite a long time ago now. It was 13 years ago. And back then, it was thought that giraffe really only communicated with one another through body language, which was one of the reasons why, it's great that you're so tall because you can see each other from far away over the tops of the trees. Now, absolutely, body language is right, it's a language on its own, and lots of different animals use it, of course, as you and I do. Um, but it was actually discovered by mistake in was it Cincinnati? I always sometimes I'm like between Cincinnati and San Diego Zoo, but this one was Cincinnati Zoo. They were doing some testing with infrasounds, I think specifically to do with elephants, which is low frequencies that travel huge distances, and that's one of the main ways that elephants communicate with one another. And they noticed that there was a frequency coming from a different area, not where the elephant enclosure was. So they figured out that it was coming from where the giraffe were. And only just a few years ago, they realized and discover that giraffe actually communicate using infrasound too. So basically doing a humming that is too low for our ears to be able to pick up. And that's one of the major ways of them being able to communicate with each other. So I just think that's fabulous. Imagine, while they're standing and staring in the distance, and here we are thinking, oh, very quickly. So I'll go back into the giraffe now, but this is very special. This is an African harrier hawk. The old name is a gymnogene. And we're in Namibia right now in Safari Hook. We will go back and I'll go into the giraffe because they're not going to be going anywhere. But to see a bird, and specifically a bird of prey and an African harrier hawk sitting still is something that we don't come across very often. So thank goodness it's the afternoon. The birds are calling, they're cleaning their feathers, they're preening them before they get ready for a chilly evening. I can only imagine in Namibia the temperatures must be dropping quite a bit now at night. But these are phenomenal birds. They stand out for a number of different reasons. Firstly, their coloration, they've got gray, they've got the bold white and black markings on them. They don't have any feathers on their legs. And then, of course, if you do get a glimpse of their faces, you'll notice that the skin around the face either appears to be yellow, orange, and sometimes even red. They're able to control the coloration sort of changes within the facial skin too, which is quite interesting. So it doesn't necessarily have anything to do with sexual dimorphism. Both male and female are able to do it. This is it looks like it's actually sitting in a leadwood tree, a very typical of the bark of leadwood, not one that is alive anymore. They can stand upright for over 100 years after they have died, which is pretty spectacular. And I mentioned that, fascinated at the fact that this bird was sitting still, because these are active birds. They don't sit and wait for their prey. They go searching for it. Now, these are, man, they some of the most incredible hunters. And winter's probably the best time to watch them because a lot of the trees lose leaves, so that does help. But they will bound up and down the branches, and they'll stick those long legs with these sharp talons straight into holes, and they're almost double jointed, so they can move that leg around quite a bit. What it reminds me of? Have you ever seen a cat, like a domestic cat, and how it sticks its one of its paws like behind the couch or underneath something to try and get whatever is interesting it, or intriguing it, interesting it. That's, anyways, English is obviously not my first language. It is, but I don't actually have an excuse. But that's what these birds look like that they're doing. They're dangling and they've got one foot in trying to grab something, but they're not sure. So there's specialists at raiding birds' nests that will use cavities. So like the starlings, the crested barbet that we were talking about earlier. My gosh, there's a whole host, woodpeckers, you name it, that will use holes as nest sites in these trees, but also they'll pull back bark. That's my favorite thing to see when a knobthorn tree is no longer alive. Obviously, the outer bark, whoop, there it goes, starts to become quite, it starts to rot away, and they'll pull big pieces of it. And then, you watch the bark fall, it might reveal a scorpion or a skink or a lizard or something along those lines. It's back up again. Beautiful that it's sitting in the water. Did it get something? Let's have a look. So you see there, that behavior, bringing its head down towards its talons, it does have something. Oh, crazy. What did you catch? It's got long legs. Are you a cricket? An armored ground cricket or something? It looks quite big. It was still alive. We are noticing, this year I've noticed an obscene amount of grasshoppers. Look at that. It is dismantling the little legs. Those aren't those crunchy bits, not for everybody. Yeah, I can still, there we go. We know it's not a mammal because it's pulled far too many legs off. It's not a bird because they've only got 2 to remove. But yeah, I would go with a grasshopper of some kind. And I'm wondering, like I said, if it is maybe an armored, what's wrong with my brain? An armored ground cricket. They're huge and chunky. Bridget McKinney, you said that you love this bird of prey. Me too. They're very special. You don't get to see them very often. At one point in the Sabi Sand, there was a pair that were nesting. It was last year, though. That was great to see. But they build their nest so high up in trees. It's not like you can really see what's going on inside the nest anyways, but still fascinating. Oh, yeah, a rather chunky insect, right? Lots there. I can't think of what else it would be, but if you think it was something different rather than a grasshopper, do let me know. It's always a great place to just chat and discuss, and we always see slightly different things. Struggling to get the bit of flesh off the tip of its beak. Do you see that? There we go. Well, fantastic. What an amazing way to end the afternoon. I thoroughly enjoyed today. Lots of variety. It's nice to see that Aldonio is green, because if you haven't seen it in dry season, you'll be absolutely shocked. So that's also something interesting as we move into different seasons. Spending time with Giraffe is always a lot of fun, right? And then, of course, this sighting that we have right now is truly special. And I haven't seen something like this, and even in person, for a couple of years. So very, very special, and I hope you all enjoyed it. But thank you so much for joining. And for those of you that have just watched us for the first time, there's not just one show a week. On Thursday, will be another show called Wild Moments, where we go through a bunch of the favorite clips from the last week, which is always a good time. And then, of course, you've got access to these cameras 24/7. But until Thursday, I hope you all have a wonderful week, and I'll see you next time.